Thank you, Governor. Secretary Bradbury.
I think that the issue of the public employee retirement system is one that the legislature really took on in 2003 and made a whole series of changes. And I think what's really required is some patience to see those changes work. It's very clear, the courts have weighed in very clearly that there are certain benefits we can't change because they were promised to public employees. So patience is required to see that implement over the next 5 or 10 years. And I think in the meetings I had with Director of Public Employee Retirement System, Paul Cleary, it clearly, the demands of the public employee retirement system do in fact diminish over time because the legislature made significant changes to the public employee retirement system. In terms of health care, I think that one of the things that I'm personally really excited about is to see the interaction between the Oregon Health Authority, which is what the legislature created last session, and the new federal health care reform. I think that's really going to enable us to reduce the cost of health care for everybody, including state employees. And I think that is a very exciting opportunity that the legislature has initiated that the governor needs to be very supportive of as we move forward.
Thank you. And Secretary Bradbury, you're up first with a question from the Portland Business Alliance's Judy Pepler. Judy?
Thank you, Laura. So after last session's budget shortfall, it looks like we're facing another shortfall for the upcoming biennium, and we won't have potentially the federal stimulus dollars that we had this time to balance the budget. The budget projections show it's a big hole to fill, up to $2 billion. What is your plan for addressing this funding issue?
So I think it's really important that we understand that it's a ways yet until we really know what the next budget looks like. It's probably at least 6, if not 9 months till the final projections are made. All of us are hoping that we'll see significant growth in the economy. So it's basically still about a year out. So I'm not going to put before you a budget with specific cuts in it because we don't know what the budget needs to look like yet. But I am going to tell you what my priorities are when it comes to putting a budget together. And my priorities are, first, to fund economic development and fund job creation to make sure that we really get the economy going the best we can. Second, I am really concerned about funding for education. And the third thing I'm very concerned about is making sure that we, as a state, take care of our most vulnerable citizens who aren't able to care for themselves. So those are the real priorities. Now, let me just say quickly that there are a couple of opportunities to find revenue without raising taxes specifically. One is the kicker. I think many of us agree that the kicker needs to be reformed so that it goes into, at least a part of it goes into a rainy day fund to levelize funding. Second thing is we could raise probably $1.2 billion if we just effectively enforced existing tax law in the state of Oregon. That would be a great thing to do. And finally, a thing I was very involved with for 9 years as Secretary of State is audits and making sure the state government is functioning effectively and efficiently and spending our money very well. So those are things that I think we really need to focus on.
Thank you, Secretary Bradbury. Governor Kitzhaber?
Well, I think first and foremost, we need to make the pie bigger by trying to get Oregon back to work. At the end of the day, that is the most effective way to recapitalize state government. So we need to focus on that. And the second thing, we're going to have to redesign systems through which we provide public services in light of the realities we face in the 21st century. Many of those systems were put in place in the end of the 19th and first half of the 20th century. So those are the two big portions. Secondly, we need to recognize that, as I said earlier, this is too big to cut our way out of and too big to tax our way out of. So we need to view the next session not as a 2-year budget balancing exercise, but any revenue conversations we have to be put in the context of whether our overall tax code is fair, is stable, and whether it is aligned with our long-term economic development objectives. This can't be a 2-year exercise. It has to be, what do we want Oregon to look like 8, 10 years down the road? And the same is true for the cuts. We have to do some very serious and very difficult prioritization of services and ask ourselves not just how we get through the next 2 years, But one of those core services that we have to maintain in the state of Oregon to create the kind of future we want 6, 7, 8 years down the road. And we also have to lay the ground for a reinvestment strategy when we do get Oregon back to work. And as I said, I've been involved in 8 different budget balancing exercises. I do understand the budget very well. And I think there is a pathway through this $2.5 billion shortfall. And I actually will provide some specifics during the course of the general campaign on how we make that work.
Governor Kinsella, this question is for you, from Ryan, from Software Association of Oregon. Ryan?
Oregon was an early leader in the clean tech industry, including energy efficiency, renewable energy, and sustainability consulting sectors. As a result, clean energy is now a significant economic sector in Oregon. However, we have since lost our edge to other states and countries, where both funding and executive talent are plentiful. Could you discuss your plans and specific ideas regarding economic development and job strategy to help move Oregon back into a leadership position?
Generally, you're in the clean tech area.
Primarily in the clean tech area.
Well, I think Oregon has got a number of remarkable opportunities here. We have, to me, the biggest job creation opportunity and the biggest opportunity for reducing the cost of both public and private sector operations here is in large community-scale weatherization projects, weatherization of public school buildings and commercial buildings. And if we can figure out how to deal with the front-end financing, which I believe is possible, there's a huge opportunity there for retrofitting these buildings and creating immediate trade jobs in that sector. We certainly do have a lot of the components of a very robust clean energy economy already in the state of Oregon. We have the energy management program that Robert Image puts together down at Glen Community College. We've got the workforce, the first in the nation clean energy engineering degree at OIT. We've got IDW working on solar installer training. What we really need to do is connect the dots. I think we have a great story to tell. I think we have a great environment for developing clean energy and clean technology, but we need to take the pieces and instead of having them be viewed as separate components, integrate those into a long-term thoughtful strategy that has a workforce component, an R&D component, and a finance component. I think it's very, very doable. I think it is one of the low-hanging opportunities for economic development and job creation in the next 2 to 4 years.
Thank you, Governor. Secretary Bradbury.
It's very clear to me that the government, state government in Oregon can play a very direct role in assisting the clean tech industry. And there are a couple of tools that we already have that we can make full use of. One of them is the so-called BETC, the Business Energy Tax Credit, that the last session revised, but the way it revised it was to basically take off the table those big projects that are already profitable, like wind projects in the gorge, but it kept on the table as part of the BETC energy efficiency investments and transportation investments. And those kinds of investments in small-scale solar, energy efficiency, transportation can really help the clean technology industry. I really believe that we've adopted a renewable portfolio standard for Oregon. We ought to adopt an energy efficiency portfolio standard for Oregon as well that would put thousands of people to work really creating energy efficiency and weatherizing homes and businesses. Finally, I think there's a real place for things like what's called a green energy mortgage, which basically it would have like the Bank of Oregon buying down mortgages to buying down the mortgage by a certain percentage, and then but the mortgage would stay at the same rate for the homeowner, and the difference could be invested in energy efficiency. A, that saves energy, but B, it puts a whole lot of people to work. So I think those are very positive things we can do.
Thank you, Secretary Bradbury. We have one more set of questions from the panel that will focus a bit more on the organization's missions. And once again, Justin from the Oregon Business Association, you'll have your first question for Secretary Bradbury.